I think it's hard to understate just how much Season 2 of the Halo TV series upset and frustrated me. It upset me for everything that it was, everything that it wasn't, and for the season that came before it. Nothing really represents a greater missed opportunity in the video game world than this show. And this season was already starting on the back foot, having the unenviable task of having to follow up Season 1, and we all remember what that season gave us, right? Those hack writers, Stephen Kane and Kyle Killen, saying that they didn't bother with the games, Kiki Wolfkill just straight up admitting that the creators of the show needed an artistic outlet, and the games were getting in their way. Then we had the horrible plot lines of Chief being a chosen one, this Forerunner object being a MacGuffin that not only figuratively, but literally moves the plot along. We had Maki, some chick who works for the Covenant, I guess, but then also bangs the Chief. Oh, and she's also a chosen one. And then we also had Kwan. She's some kind of shaman or like planet protector. Listen, I'm gonna be honest, even after seeing Season 2, I still don't understand the point of her character, other than being the most unlikable person in the show. But overall, Season 1 of the Halo TV series, it just wasn't Halo and was far and away from what fans expected and waited for. Maybe it was Halo in name, and sure, it had Spartans and it had the UNSC, but it completely and totally deviated from any semblance of what the games gave us, which was even more disappointing because we all waited nearly 2 decades for this. And after being strung along, being told we're getting a movie, then we're getting a show, and Spielberg was going to write and direct it and all this stuff, and then we get this? So it came as no surprise, especially to the fans, that Season 1 really wasn't accepted by the Halo community. A lot of people hated it a lot, and like the Halo community always does, we made sure to voice our opinion. But out of nowhere, and I really didn't expect this, after Season 1, Kiki Wolfkill actually said that they would learn from Season 1 and would consider the fans' feedback. Given 343's and really Kiki Wolfkill's stubbornness and reluctance to do anything other than what they want, it was refreshing to see that they would actually possibly listen to what the fans wanted. As we closed in on the launch date for Season 2, we got more word from the producers. Certainly the most important news was that they hired some guy named David Weiner and got rid of the Season 1 showrunners Stephen Kane and Kyle Killen. Yep, no longer any involvement from these two guys. Oh, except they wrote literally every episode in Season 2. So yeah, almost like that was a marketing ploy to make people think that they were gone. Huh. And believe it or not, people bought it. Then in March 2024, the first 2 episodes of Season 2 were released, and I was utterly whelmed. So much so that it took me 3 days to get through these couple episodes. Surprisingly though, other people seemed to love it, I guess, saying how much the showrunners clearly learned from their past mistakes, and that hardcore Halo fans were just going to love this new direction that they were taking the series. So I decided to give it a chance. Then once I was done watching this 8-episode season, I did my research to see what others thought about it. I was shocked, to say the least. Rotten Tomatoes gave it an 89% critic score and a 69% audience score. That's an insanely high score, especially when you consider the reception that Season 1 got. Let's read some of these comments that definitely aren't from bots and try to see what's going on here.
This session is great. The CGI is great, the fight scenes and the Sonelli are great, so much is happening but you're still able to perceive and understand what's going on with every detail. The characters and actors are great, they fill the role and personality.
Had a slower start in beginning of the season but then became really good again. Want more?
It's a very good action TV show, but people think that, again, it's their mistakes.
Yep, that sounds good to me. To get the full story though, I figured I should check out the most critical place of all, the Halo subreddit. And wouldn't you believe it, just like Rotten Tomatoes, I found almost nothing but praise. And I think I found my favorite comment out of the whole bunch that really encapsulates the reason why people think they loved this season.
Y'all can't be pleased. It's a real shame because you're going to get the best rendition of Halo in live action. So far, canceled. Just to recap, we got to see Elites, Jackals, and 2 Grunts. We got to see Spartan 3s. This was huge! A highlight for me. We got space fights, space war, and space kamikaze. We got to see the Chief be betrayed, get his armor back, get a weapon, how many times, and fight with an energy sword. We got to see a very good portrayal of the flood outbreak.
Unfortunately for this guy, I had already watched the entirety of Season 2 by the time I read this, so I know how low-tier garbage his opinion is and how utterly and completely objectively wrong he is on almost every single point, and how my opinion is truly superior and therefore factually correct. Oh, but actually he is right on this one though. We do, in fact, see 2 Grunts. So after reading all these comments absolutely praising Season 2, I began to develop a thesis as to why this might be the case. Because if you watch season 2 and really think about it, you'll realize that it doesn't really deserve all this praise, and it's kind of weird. So what I think we're seeing here on a mass scale is the positive contrast effect. But really, before we even get into that, we have to talk about season 2 first. Was it really that good? Was it somewhere in the middle, or was it more horrible than we could possibly imagine? The very first episode ends up being an absolute roller coaster of emotions, as it somehow displays the best and worst aspects of Season 1. From awesome battles between Spartans and Covenant to bullshit side stories and drama that we really couldn't care less about. The very first thing you'll notice is the intro. Oh wow, the Halo music. Oh, that's weird. I was wondering why it was used pretty much not at all in the first season. I'm not afraid to admit it, this intro gave me goosebumps. And that's mostly due to this great music. So it really is a shame then when you realize that they didn't use any more Halo music at all throughout the rest of the season. There really are some neat things in this episode though, especially the scene where Chief saves Marines by fighting off a bunch of elites. The choreography and the camera work for this shot is so absolutely fantastic that I had to watch it several times. I mean, this shotgun segment is just so damn good. And it even had little bits of world building in there, really showing the huge difference in skill between a regular soldier and the Master Chief. These Marines are caught off guard, they're fumbling around, and then Chief steps in and kills all these elites with ruthless efficiency. And it would have been a great shot if it was just that, because see this woman right here? Her name is Perez, and she's another main character. And if you watch through all of season 2, you would have just hoped that she died in this scene, because she goes on to give us one of the most horrible, laughable, and dumb character arcs that I've ever seen in media. In fact, it's so bad that it also completely obliterates the entire idea of what Spartan 3s are and turns them into a laughable farce. I know that sounds ridiculous, but we'll have to get into that later. But unfortunately, that's kind of where my praise stops, because there's not really much more good to say about this episode. Actually, we do get to see a plan to get glass and everyone dies, so I mean, that's kind of cool. Sure hope Kwan Ha's down there, right? She's not going to be in this season, right? We also get reintroduced to Soren, our favorite Spartan pirate guy living in the rubble, and he's buying and selling refugees and making them slaves. That's kind of a weird trait to give one of your 18 main characters. I'm sure we're not going to be following him this whole season and having to root for him to, like, find his kid or something. That'd be really stupid. Right? Speaking of other annoying character additions, meet this new Oni dude named Ackerson, literally created to make roadblocks for Chief. It's sometimes comical how evil and untrustworthy this guy is. Like, he just meets the Chief who's saying, yeah, the Covenant literally glassed this whole planet. We should, like, really watch out, dude. It's serious out there. And Ackerson's like, nah, did you really see that? I don't think so, dude. Excuse me, what? Is this the drama angle that we're forcing upon the Chief this season? By the end of this season, and I mean the very end, it's kind of revealed that Ackerson and Oni believed Chief the whole time, but they really just didn't want to tell anyone because everyone was gonna die anyway. Huh? That's a really dumb reason to just not say anything. I mean, that's really dumb. You're compromising one of your greatest assets, Spartan 2s, and millions, possibly billions of people. Isn't that like the worst way to go about this? It's just really damn frustrating because the guy that plays Ackerson, he's not a bad actor. He's actually pretty good. But about the first 3 hours of this season just deals with him being a comical bad guy and just not believing Chief, and it's so frustrating that no one else sees it. But Ackerson is tied to another plot line, and that's with Halsey. But it brings us to another thing that doesn't really feel like Halo. So Ackerson has Halsey cooped up in this projection field held prisoner, and to torture her he keeps bringing in kids that are flash clone that just die right in front of her over and over again. Yes, this actually happens. And if you're wondering how Halsey was captured, well, it happened off screen, so screw you. In the meantime, there's a big manhunt going on for Dr. Halsey because no one knows that Ackerson has her prisoner. Ackerson also has Cortana kind of prisoner and is using her to find out more information about the artifact and the Halo. I'm not gonna lie, trying to follow all of this was kind of confusing because I realized I had pretty much blocked out season 1 from my mind, but soon I was reminded why. Kwan. Yep, that's right, folks. Somehow Kwan returned. Now, you may have seen a lot of people say, wow, they really softened Kwan, and hey, they made Kwan way better. She's not annoying anymore. But what you didn't realize is how completely wrong they were. Kwan is very much in season 2, and bafflingly still has a major, and I mean major, role in this season, yet she is still a complete and utter asshole to everyone around her. The funny thing is, at first they make you think the complete opposite. The first handful of scenes where Kwan is shown, she quite literally has no lines, luring you into a false sense of security that, oh hey, maybe they are actually done with her, maybe she won't be in this season that much, maybe they actually did listen to the fans. That is until episode 2, when Kwan is listening to Soren's 7-year-old son who's sad that Soren isn't around. What would your response be to a small child who's very worried, and unbeknownst to him, his father may actually be dead? Would you A, console him, let him know that you understand, but through bravery and faith that you could stay strong, or would you B, yell in the little kid's face and tell him that you're never seeing your dad again? Oh, you picked A. Well, that doesn't sound very modern writing girl boss of you, does it? I'm actually not joking though. In yet another unintentionally hilarious moment in this show, Kwan's very first line of dialogue is her yelling at a crying child and telling him that his father is never coming back. I mean, I have to applaud the writers. I'm sorry. They are the biggest trolls in the industry. It's hilarious. Nearly every criticism revolves around this chick being too unlikable. Yet your response is to have her very first line of dialogue be about telling a child that her dad is never coming back and is probably dead. Just amazing. Fantastic. They didn't stop there though. They've also given her the ability to somehow kill 3 or 4 grown men at once. I can't remember the exact number. This entire scene was really dumb. I think she took out a guy by tripping him, but as I watched this scene play out right before my eyes in episode 2, I came to the horrible realization that Kwan wasn't going anywhere. They weren't softening her, they weren't reducing her story, they weren't killing her off. Kwan was here to stay in spite of the fans' overwhelming negative sentiment. I was so hopeful that she would at the very least get the rose treatment, but no such luck here. As far as Kwan goes though, everything that's built up comes to fruition at the finale of this season in a massive spit in the face to all of the fans. Kwan single-handedly damns literally the entire galaxy because she's too stupid to just say one single sentence. It's so incredibly absurd, so ridiculous that I couldn't believe what I was seeing, but we'll have to wait until the very end to get into that. So how we doing, folks? Are we enjoying the ride so far? Are we really pumped to see what the Paramount Halo team has in store for us? I sure am. As you probably heard before, the big draw to this season, at least for Halo fans, was the fact that this would have a depiction of the Fall of Reach, an important historical plot point within the lore of Halo, where the Covenant attacks the planet Reach, a major human stronghold, the birthplace of the Spartan program, and the location of Cortana. We already have 2 different versions of the Fall of Reach currently, the Reach game and the Fall of Reach book, written in 2001, which is a fantastic book, by the way. And it was written in 7 weeks, did you know that? Pretty cool. Eric Nyland knows what he's doing. But anyway, yeah, there's already 2 separate depictions of the Fall of Reach, so fuck it. Why not a third worse version? Let me just say from the start that if you thought this entire season pertained to the Fall of Reach, then you're wrong. This season absolutely blasts through set pieces as it progresses, especially during the last few episodes. By the time the finale rolls, we're moving at a breakneck speed. But as far as Reach goes, we get the Fall of Reach through roughly about 35 to 40 minutes of screen time. But I will say this, as soon as the invasion begins, it's a brutal and surprising assault. What's not fully explained though is how the Covenant just showed up unimpeded by anyone or anything, but okay. And we have to bring this up, but this is all Bungie's fault. Yeah, I said it. The book describes the Fall of Reach as a Covenant armada attacking and overwhelming the UNSC and pretty much glassing the planet within a few hours. We give a good fight, but Reach eventually falls. The Reach game kind of follows what they did in the show, where the Covenant somehow sneak onto the planet without being seen and launch a ground invasion. Again, this is super dumb, but I'm really pissed that the one time the show adapts something from the games, it's the worst version of events. How is there some massive Covenant armada chilling out there ready to glass the planet, just landing troops on the surface completely unseen? Did they not come into contact with any UNSC forces on the ground? Did we let them right through or whatever? I guess I'm not supposed to think about it and just turn my brain off. And at this point, you know what? That's basically what this show has turned into for me. The problem is, if you have a pulse and a working brain, this huge epic battle is completely marred by everything around it. Chief can bare fist fight an elite, we can see huge explosions, a wraith, and all this stuff, but you know you're going back to Kwan and Soren and Ackerson. And why again is Oni just letting Chief and the Spartan 2s there to just die? You know, it really isn't all that bad though, and I'm certainly able to pick out the good in the pile of bad. Lewis 036 is actually a pretty decent addition to the show. I like the relationship that him and Riz have in the episodes leading up to this. And even though we kind of already got this with Soren, it's always interesting to see the stark contrast in how free Spartans live their lives versus Silver Team. While Lewis 036 might be blind, he might have disabilities holding him back, When we see him contrasted with Riz, we realize he lives a much freer life than her or any of the other Spartans. Not to mention they give him a pretty good send-off after he tragically finds out that his husband was killed. He gives his life to let everyone else escape. It actually made me feel something for the first time in this entire series. But I think one of the better moments of this season is also Keyes' speech. It brings up a pretty surprising aspect of this season that I didn't expect at all. For the second time in this episode, Keyes' speech managed to pull some semblance of emotion out of me, which is more than I could say for literally every episode that led up to this point. Having Chief there being introduced to all the Marines, having them look up to him as not only a Spartan, but another soldier who was willing to fight by their side in a completely hopeless battle, that was great. It brought so much humanity to the Chief that it actually showed that they could do an armorless and helmetless Chief in the right way. People might not like it, it might not be like the games, but if we're going to have a helmetless Chief, if we need to have this is what it looks like when it's done right. But there's still times when it's just kinda out of place. For instance, right before this episode, we witnessed the Chief sneaking around in a hoodie to talk to the Admiral, and then we had Chief walking in on Perez's family dinner. I hate to say it, and I really don't have any answer for how this could be done right, but these things just kinda seem silly. Chief is a 7-foot tall absolute beast of an augmented human. He'd get picked out as a Spartan in like a second. This entire family doesn't seem to notice until it's straight up told to them. Oh wow, really? You're a Spartan? And even going past the physical ridiculousness of it, just seeing Chief interacting with people having a dinner is kind of goofy. The writing in this scene simply doesn't work for the medium. Silver timeline or not, Chief is never meant to be sitting at a family dinner trying to convince a girl with PTSD that the fall of Reach is coming. Now, I'm not saying at all that you can't show Chief with emotion. You absolutely could. And like I said, you could do a helmetless Chief correctly, but you kind of really need good writers for that. And do you have that, guys? Do ya? It's much easier to do stuff like having him beat up an elite with his bare hands. See, that works. That was awesome. And at the very end of the Fall of Reach, we're treated to some character deaths. Again, I was kind of surprised that this show managed to get another bit of emotion out of me. The way Keyes went out was pretty badass, and even though Keyes is a fantastic character, the scene really seems like it was written for more of a Sergeant Johnson type. But speaking of, where's Sergeant Johnson? Anyone? Are we gonna write him in the story, or are we gonna... Okay. Unfortunately, Vanek is killed off in this scene as well. This one is done in a much more brutal way. Literally just gets blown up by a needler. It's quick, it's ruthless, and it's shocking. They really gave him the cat treatment. It did a good job of communicating how nearly helpless this war was with the Covenant, and how things can turn from bad to worse on a dime. It also gives a spotlight moment for Riz, where she can't stand to leave Vanek's body behind. She rips out of there dual-wielding pistols and basically sacrifices herself just to save the body of her brother. During the climax of the Fall of Reach, the Chief fights the Arbiter, and oh no, look who else is here, it's Maki. I pretty much blocked it out of my head that Chief smashed because that was the most out of place and dumb thing ever. Even Pablo said as much. So hey, the scene could have been worse if I had remembered that. Chief does get beaten though, but actually gets saved by Maki. But this fight was super badass even if Chief didn't have his armor. It really showed just how strong he is without it. All of the fights with the Covenant were enjoyable, and ironically, with the show writers trying to push as much drama as possible onto the screen, the times where they just shut up and fight are some of the best. I know you can't just have non-stop action, and character development is key to any good story, but the scenes where they're fighting the Covenant are just so damn good, and these writers can't really do character development. One more thing that was a complete missed opportunity is that they decided not to add Halo music in literally any of this episode. Do yourself a favor and just check out this video to see how much better things could have been, because me explaining it would only go so far. You gotta feel it. So at the very end of the Fall of Reach, some of our heroes do actually make it off the planet. Chief, Riz, Halsey, Soren. And wait, who's that to save them? Oh, it's Kwan. Oh, by the way, if you're wondering how Soren and Halsey got here, well, he was actually looking for Halsey, and Soren broke her out as the invasion was going on because Soren wanted to see her in who cares? Doesn't really do anything for the story other than be a motive for them to just so happen to stumble upon each other, bringing the whole Halo Avengers squad together, so now we have that. The next episode, though, is a nice break. I can't really say much for this one because of how utterly uninterested and bored I was. The only good thing about this episode was the humanity of the Chief, his dealing with Riz's reckless nature, the death of someone he knew his entire life, him confronting Dr. Halsey. It really is just a great emotional display for our main character, especially when he does the eulogy for Vanek. I have to give credit where it's due. The showrunners, and dare I say Stephen Kane and Kyle Killen, somehow were able to make me care about this version of the Chief. But again, the problem is literally everything else in the show. First off, this cheesy dialogue. Even when Chief's final speech to Vanek is going pretty well, and I'm finally feeling positive towards the show, he says, "I will be your weapon." Come on, guys. But even worse, we're still stuck with the rest of these assholes. Kwan yet again shows no sympathy and is just a spiteful and hateful character. She tries to convince Chief to bury Vanek, but Chief at first wants nothing to do with it. It's an interesting look into what Chief thinks about the true life purpose of the Spartans, and he pretty much believes that Spartans live and die on the battlefield. They've ceased being normal humans, they only follow orders, and once they're dead, and he therefore sees no reason to bury something that's just another body now to him. Rather than having Kwan actually have some character growth and convince Chief to see things her way, show some compassion for the guy who was brainwashed as a kid, tell him that he's just as human as anyone else, she just gets impatient with him and basically tells him to F off. We also have to deal with the indentured servitude fans, Soren and his wife, who have literally been buying refugees based on whether or not they had info on Halsey. Oh boy, I'm really rooting for these guys. Anyway, it looks like the UNSC stole their son, Kessler. Oh, that sucks. Oh hey, by the way, we're going to follow this plotline for the rest of the entire season, so I hope you want to see hours of Soren and his wife searching for their child. You see, the problem is, I never cared that much about Soren. I never cared about his wife, and I don't think anyone cares about Keller, or Kessler? Whatever his name is. Yet they insist on trying to make us care about these characters. It's revealed that Kwan still has that whole bullshit shaman protector thing going on, and this old lady is giving her visions and she's a protector now, whatever that is. I hate this. This theme of ruining good moments pretty much follows throughout the rest of this season. Anytime you get those desperate few minutes of Halo Season 2 being enjoyable, expect a hard cut to Kwan or any of these other assholes that these brilliant writers threw up onto the script. Hey, speaking of throwing up all over the script with horribly written new characters, here's Perez. Please just prepare for what I'm about to discuss here because it's possibly one of the worst pieces of writing in the entire history of any show ever. Are you ready? Okay. By this time in Season 2, we've known Perez for several episodes, and she is not okay. She watched her friends, her entire platoon die right in front of her eyes. She was woefully underprepared for facing the Covenant and needed the Chief to save her life. She's been strong-armed into silence by Oni. Then within the next week, her entire family was brutally slaughtered by the Covenant, and then she barely escaped reach with her life. She has massive amounts of PTSD and self-doubt, and proven in almost every instance that she's simply not fit for battle. I can't imagine sending someone this mentally broken and underprepared into combat. Well, that's why it makes perfect sense to the writers that Perez should become a Spartan in like a couple days. Playing video games on a headset, because that's how it works. This isn't a joke, guys. If you haven't seen the show, I'm really, literally not joking. Perez is somehow promoted to becoming a Spartan 3, just like that. It literally makes no sense, even in the Silver timeline. In the standard game and book lore, Spartan 3s follow after Spartan 2s, and you actually play as Spartan 3s in the Reach video game, and they're still super soldiers and still augmented humans who are the best of the best and have to go through grueling training. It really wasn't until Spartan 4s where we got unaugmented soldiers wearing Spartan armor on a mass-produced scale, but still, it wasn't easy to just become a Spartan. Yet the Halo TV series exists as such a stark contrast in the opposite direction that it simply does not make sense as to why you call these people Spartans. Hell, by the logic of the show, I could be a Spartan. Hook me up, bro. You got Beat Saber on here? What makes this even worse, and I know that's kind of difficult to believe, but this is supposedly Ackerson's life work, his greatest masterpiece, and he's proud of it. Really? Putting unassuming soldiers into VR and just giving them armor, that's the great, this can all just be chalked up to horrible writing, and the only thing it's meant to do is, for whatever reason, keep Perez relevant to the story. And I'm criticizing the inclusion of Perez because the show gives nothing else to go off of. We don't see any crazy training, we don't see any hardship that they go through. In fact, the only thing that we see is Perez failing at the beginning of the show, then getting PTSD, watching all of her friends die, and then within a few days, play VR and become a Spartan 3. That's it. Why should I care about this at all? And let's even say that these are more like Spartan 4s. Okay, great. Why would you pick Perez? She was on the comms team. Chief literally makes a quip about how he can tell that they work in communications because of how shit they are. Oni, the UNSC, they couldn't pull anyone else? ODSTs maybe, or these Black Ops guys? No? Okay, we had to go with the traumatized comms team woman. Alright, okay. The only good thing that comes out of this is that Ackerson took Kai under his wing and made her the lead trainer for the Spartan 3 program. Not like she really can do much though. How's she gonna train these people when they play VR? She gives them some gaming tips, I guess? I don't know. But this scene makes me feel like I'm watching an esports coach. Chief training Silver Team, now that was cool. This, I still can't fathom who thought this was a good idea. Well, folks, that leads to nearly the end of the show, even though this script goes on for about 10 more pages. The last few episodes mainly take place at Onyx Base, which is basically a large secret Oni compound. Let me catch up to speed. Chief infiltrates Onyx Base to take down Ackerson and Admiral Parangoski for revenge for leaving them to die on Reach. Kwan and Halsey and Miranda Keys are underneath Onyx, researching a spooky Forerunner cave, and Kai is there training her Spartan 3s. It's time for me to give credit where it's due again. I promise I'm not just trying to completely bash this show, that's really not my point, but this entire sequence of Chief at Onyx Base I think is one of the best ways you can do an armorless Chief. But unfortunately he gets captured breaking into the base because of course Kwan is almost captured doing some stupid shaman bullshit. The Chief very expertly takes down all these Oni soldiers guarding the base, and even once he's captured and literally chained to the ground, he manages to beat the absolute piss out of all of these guys, throwing them around the room while he still has one arm chained to the ground. It's a great scene, and again it shows the power of a Spartan 2, and I don't know if anyone noticed this, but in the camera shot they show Chief unscrewing the rivets in his shackles by hand, which is just cold. But upon looking closer, the fingers look kind of weird. If I had a bet, I think they just forgot to tell Pablo to make that motion, so they had to add his little CGI finger movements in post. But that leads to the Kai confrontation, which is pretty much peak helmetless, armorless Jimmy Rings here. You see, Kai was convinced somehow by Ackerson that Master Chief is a traitor, which in my opinion is very dumb, but hey, we need drama in the show, I guess. Even though I doubt Kai would ever go turncoat on the Chief, but that's just my headcanon, I guess. After Chief escapes, Kai is sent down by Ackerson to capture him. So we see an armored Spartan versus an armorless one, and he gets absolutely destroyed. But the entire time he's taken a beating, he manages to convince Kai that she's being played, that she needs to think for herself and stop following orders blindly. It's a full realization that Chief is more than just a Spartan. He discovers his humanity, and this really shows how determined John is to stand up for what they are. Oh boy, real character development, wow. This pays off in a big way by Kai confronting Ackerson, learning the truth about him leaving the rest of the Spartans and everyone on Reach for dead, and she leaves and goes back to help the Chief. This brings Ackerson's whole betrayal plot to its climax, and I can't say that I didn't enjoy watching Ackerson's plot crumble around him. Hell, this was leagues better than the drama that we had in the form of Kwan hating Soren or Chief touching the artifact 100 times and having these visions. And this also leads us to John and Cortana being reunited. This entire time she's been on the Covenant ship with Maki, which Cortana pronounces as McKee. Alright, am I pronouncing it wrong? Is she pronouncing it wrong? Cortana helps the Chief and convinces him to get back up after he's been beaten by Kai. Cortana starts opening doors for him, locking off other pathways and stopping troops from getting to him. She basically takes over the base. It's a fun moment that harkens back to the teamwork and camaraderie that Chief and Cortana had in the games. I'm not gonna lie, this is pretty great. And then finally, when Chief and Kai reunite within the base, they find Ackerson and force him to give back Chief's armor. I can almost guarantee that the writers made this tongue-in-cheek, as if he was speaking on behalf of all of the fans hating the fact that he was without his armor for most of the season. But then we experience a massive missed opportunity, and I was pretty much yelling at the screen as this happened. So we've had the Chief without his armor this entire season except for maybe 10 minutes in the first episode, and by this point I'm pretty convinced that this plotline of him having his armor stolen was written to spite the fans that hated having him helmetless in season 1. As if the writers are like, oh, you hated that he doesn't have his helmet on? Well, you're really gonna hate when we show him without his armor for 7 episodes straight. But after he finally gets to it, after hours of watching him struggle and fight pretty much barehanded against the Covenant, it would have been such a great moment to watch him use it and just walk through some Black Ops soldiers, or I don't know, just anything. But I could even forgive that. What I can't forgive is the fact that the showrunners decided that this scene, they would just not use Halo music. I really can't believe this. I'm not a writer, I'm not a director, but I know this would have been the easiest layup for them. I could see the comments right now. Bro, when she finally got his armor back and the Halo theme song started playing, holy shit, dude, I literally got goosebumps. I would probably comment that. But that's kind of the opposite of what we get. It's honestly anticlimactic and doesn't really pay off in any way. I mean, we see him use it maybe like 30 minutes later, and this stuff might not matter to the broader audience, but to Halo fans, this would have been the time to give us a little bit of fan service. Right before this missed opportunity though, Agerson reveals what the Admiral had been planning this whole time. Currently far away from Onyx, the Covenant and Maquis have actually found Halo, and the human fleet met them there with Spartan 3s to try to stop them. The training mission that the Spartan 3s have been going on, where they insert this spiker thing into a Covenant ship control system, it's really just a big bomb. It somehow programs the ship to compact its fusion core, suffering a catastrophic explosion and destroying everything within a 1,000,000-mile radius. Let me say that again. 1,000,000 miles. Why did this need to be a thing? This is so comically ridiculous and opens up so many plot holes throughout the entire series. Let me break this down for the writers that aren't as smart as me. You have the ability to compress the fusion core drive of a ship to make it explode and do a 1,000,000-mile radius explosion. Why aren't you making it your sole mission to capture Covenant ships and plant all of these compression programs on there and destroy every single Covenant armada that you've ever seen? Hell, why wouldn't you just send your AI in there to do that? Better yet, why aren't you building your own ships, pilot them with AI, and then compress your own drives? Wouldn't that completely devastate the entire Covenant fleet? Even if you couldn't generate an explosion with that much power from your own human fusion drives, even if it's 1/50th as powerful, that's still more than enough to completely devastate any force, hell, any planet that you come across. But nah, this plot device wasn't thought of past, we need to raise the stakes. It gives us some drama and makes the Chief want to save people, so screw it. It'll just be dropped in Season 3 anyway. Finally, we find ourselves at the end of this mess in the finale, but first we better pump the brakes really quick. Remember at the beginning of this video where I stated that Kwan would end up doing something so horrendous, so utterly stupid that she damned every single living being in the entire galaxy? Well, at the very end of episode 7, Halsey, Miranda Keyes, and Kwan are underground trying to excavate and get in this old Forerunner door. Not sure why they couldn't just like cut through it or excavate around it, but I've just learned to stop asking questions. But they do eventually get in, and they do some really dumb Kwan shaman crap where she moves stars around, whatever. Now this scene I enjoyed. This is some pretty decent Halo fan service where they had the light bridge. It looks pretty neat, and it's neat to see in live action. They eventually break into an old Forerunner lab where they unknowingly get a sealed and contained sample of the Flood. This is very, very important. We all know what the Flood is, right? If you're watching this video, I can almost guarantee that you do, but if you're someone who doesn't even like Halo and just threw on a long video to eat your dinner to, let me explain. The Flood is a parasitic life form that takes over your body and uses it as a vessel to transmit itself to others, essentially continually spreading, gathering more biomass. The very interesting thing about the Flood though is that it gains the intelligence of whoever it consumes, adding to the central consciousness that is the Flood. And when enough gather in an area, a proto-gravemind forms, which then turns into a gravemind, eventually compiling all the information and knowledge of all life forms that it consumed into a central being, with the ability to control all other Flood life forms at will. Now, I absolutely hate zombies and the whole zombie obsession in the early 2010s, if you remember that. It sucked really bad, and I hate zombies because of it. But this is the coolest way to do space zombies. So much so that I actually love the Flood. There's so much more deep lore behind them, and I barely even scratched the surface. But you have to understand that this is the reason why so many people were hyped to see the Flood in the series. However, like everything in this show, they surrounded it with bullshit and they ruined it. Kwan realized through her shaman training or cave paintings or whatever that she found on the walls that this lab is actually hiding an extremely dangerous thing. She realizes this while she's still with Halsey and Keyes, yet instead of explaining in one simple sentence, hey, this place houses an extremely deadly organism, we need to lock it the f down, she says absolutely nothing and runs away. And no, Kwan didn't know that Keyes had the sample stashed up her sleeve, but why? Why wouldn't she tell Halsey and Keyes what they found? If she's so terrified of this potentially galactic threat, why did she not say a single word about it to them? Hell, why didn't she warn them as they were going into the facility? Hey guys, by the way, I also saw these other cave drawings that warned of these horrible organisms that consume all life in the galaxy. So yeah, that might be inside here, and we should be insanely careful, and actually we probably shouldn't even be in here right now, so. But no, yet again, Kwan cements herself as the most stupid and hateable character in the entire series. So let's get back to the final episode to see how they handle the actual release of the Flood, because remember, Keys didn't even open the device yet. It's still safely sealed up, and no one has yet to be exposed to the Oh, good. Oh, but wait, it's still contained, so still, no one has yet been exposed to the Flood. Again, Kwan could have helped the whole galaxy avoid this, but hey, at least Keys has it under containment. Oh, good. Yep, the biologist. The biologist, who we don't even know, releases the Flood. How did anyone in that godforsaken writing room think that this was acceptable? So you're telling me that this moron biologist, who probably does biologist stuff all the time, she just walks out of the lab and starts touching people? For God's sakes. And then the music they put over it, I don't, what genre? Why did you do? I'm getting overwhelmed. I'm sorry. Hold on. I gotta take a break. I've said this many times now, I know I probably sound like a broken record, but these are the issues with the show. They're taking something interesting and beloved from the original games and just surrounding it with this garbage. It actually made it kind of difficult to enjoy seeing the live-action Flood infection take place because you're just asking all these questions. How is this biologist so dumb? Why didn't they... Alright, I get it now. No more questions. But now it's time to take a step back from Onyx and looking back to the Halo, because, there's still this whole point of the show, I guess. We get a great scene with Kai and Chief. Chief getting his suit does kind of pay off, and he kills a bunch of elites while saving the remaining Spartan 3s and Kai, and actually stopping them from going through on their suicide mission. And this scene right here perfectly encapsulates how you can do a dramatic and emotional story between two characters who are wearing suits of armor. They struggle with their identities as Spartans. Chief restores Kai's faith and pushes them along to keep going. See? Was that so hard? You kept their helmets on and it was still emotional. I mean, it can't be done, guys. Then we get to see Chief fly through space to get to Maki's ship, dodging debris and wreckage, and it's really one of the more well-done shots in the series. Once he gets to Maki's ship, he's again reunited with Cortana. It's a nice reunion, even if it's punctuated by something really dumb. How did Chief manage to just punch this console and Cortana transferred into his... Sorry. No questions, that's right. Wow, epic moment, dude. But what's even more epic is Kai's final scene where she crashes her captured Covenant ship into this Covenant supercarrier. Now, I'm not entirely sure if this detail is in the books or not, but the way they designed the Covenant ship controls was pretty neat, just rubbing two big old balls there. Either way, this was a nice send-off for Kai, and I really hope she's still alive because she's honestly one of my favorite characters in the series. So we finally made it to Halo. Chief dives down with Cortana, now back by his side, after all the visions, all the stupid artifact MacGuffin BS, which I really loathe from Season 1. All the dream sequences with Maki, the shaman BS with Kwan, all of it. It finally leads us here. And to be completely honest, I still really don't even know why we actually have to care about the Halo in the context of the show. And I didn't even realize this, but neither did anyone else except Maki. When Chief asked her about it, she ends up saying that it makes everything clean and it will start anew, and it basically kills everyone. Still not clear exactly how or why, but alright, that does fit with the game's lore, kind of. But the Halo ends up being the climax set piece for Chief's story in Season 2. Chief finally avenges Vanek by killing the Arbiter in a pretty brutal battle where Chief literally beats the Elite's face in and then executes him. Maki ends up getting really upset, and I don't understand why, because the Arbiter tried to kill her like 5 times, so why you crying? During one of the last scenes on Halo, we get to see a large Forerunner structure coming out of the ground, and then a massive armada of Covenant ships roll in. Cortana says some lines reminiscent of the games, and all at once I felt like I was transported back to Combat Evolved. It really seemed like this is harkening back to the games in a big way, but at this point, would it even be worth it? We've had so much thrown in our face, so much that deviated from the original formula, that it almost seems stupid to turn back and try to emulate the games. Hell, I'm not even sure I would want to at this point. What I always wanted, what everyone probably wanted, was this to have a good story that at the very least felt like Halo. But at this point, it's kind of just not, and that's namely due to all the BS we've been fed up to this point. At the very climax of the season finale, we get a kind of interesting yet frustrating scene with who else but Kwan. This old lady who's been giving Kwan visions the entire season randomly stops the Flood from attacking Kwan at the last second. unfortunately, and then gives a chilling and fantastic monologue about the Flood. Is this lady the Gravemind? Is she an ancient forerunner? How could she control the Flood if she's not the Gravemind? Is she tricking Kwan? It brings up a lot of interesting questions, but then again, they all involve Kwan, and I'd sooner have Soren be this protector thing than her. Actually, anyone but her. Oh god, I haven't even talked about Soren and his family. Yeah, I think he finds his son, or maybe doesn't, who the hell cares? Oh wait, yeah, that's his wife dies. That's right, I forgot about that. However, the finale had one more surprise up its sleeve for us, and guess what? We're still not done with ruining more Halo characters. May I introduce you to 343 Guilty Spark, or the Monitor, and I only say that because that's how it's referred to in the credits. And if you look further into the credits, you'll realize they decided to not use the original voice actor. Another great choice by the showrunners. Why do voice actors get such disrespect in the industry? Not to mention, Tim's voice as Guilty Spark is actually iconic. It's wild that they took this misstep. Actually, it's par for the course, I guess. But the way they went with this Monitor is just so lame. The dialogue is completely forced, and it's trying so hard to sound mysterious and intellectual. It's so far off from the original, and is another interpretation of the original material that just doesn't work. It's such a shame. It's just so frustrating that they took another character that everyone loved, and they just threw it right in the trash. At least on the good side, that's where this season ends, but not before Maki gives us another eye-rolling line of dialogue. I'm a demon too. Ugh. Not really much more to talk about other than the fact that we made it to Halo. Looks like we're finally home. So that's what we got, folks. Yet another installment in this series that is pretty much just Halo in name. But I need to bring something up. I did, in fact, enjoy this season much more than the first one. In this season, whether you like the plot points or not, they did have a build-up and payoff. Like with Ackerson, how he seemed to be completely evil, but then just kind of ends up helping Chief and Kai in the end, and then we find out that he's pretty much just a puppet of the Admiral. Or the conflict and resolution we have between Chief and Kai. I think that's only the two plot lines that I really enjoyed. And that should really tell the writers something. They not only have too many storylines going on at once, the storyline and the characters involved within them suck ass. I literally could not care less about Kwan's protector journey. I swear to God, they're gonna make her some kind of super powerful being and she's gonna save the galaxy or something. I just know it. I know it. And then Soren and his wife searching for his kid. Who gives a shit about this? We kind of have more pressing matters going on. It's the fate of the entire human race, possibly the galaxy. There's just so much other crap that's piled on that I didn't even get time to get into. And again, a major downfall for this show is that they've pretty much written all unlikable characters. I hate almost every single person in this show that I'm watching on screen, except for the Spartans, and sometimes not even them. Kwan is objectively annoying, yet they're hinting that they're going to pin major plot elements of the story directly onto her, and yet she's shown about zero character growth throughout this whole entire series. And it really isn't just Kwan. Tons of characters make baffling or stupid decisions throughout this series, and especially in Season 2 with the release of the Flood. However, and I know I'm going to piss off a lot of people here, but for the most part, I enjoyed Chief in this. They did so much better with writing his character in Season 2. We didn't have to deal with all the visions, the stupid damn artifact, him being naked half the show, him sleeping with Maki, or taking off his helmet every 2 seconds while he's getting shot at. Jesus, Season 1 really did suck, didn't it? But speaking of the helmet, I actually kind of enjoyed seeing him without his armor. Like, I fully understand that we aren't doing a helmeted Chief, and I totally disagree with Pablo's statements, or more likely the executive's feelings that you can't have a helmeted character. But if this is what we're going with, I can deal with this version. Season 2 proved that it doesn't have to be terrible. And if you got rid of these hack writers, then you could probably make it great. I have to admit, I also like the whole Ackerson and Oni subversion plot thread too, kind of, more so that it was actually something that happened in the show and it had a build up and payoff. And I like Kai too, but I don't know about everything else, guys. Well, this has certainly been a journey, but I think I'm finally ready to discuss this thing mentioned 8,500 words ago, the positive contrast effect. After viewing Season 2 and then seeing so many people absolutely freaking out over how amazing this season was, I was scratching my head. Sure, the season was much better than Season 1, but that's a disgustingly low bar to step over. And sure, season 2 was good at times and they vastly improved Chief's character, but like I said, you simply can't look past some of the awful writing that makes you just sit there and scratch your head or roll your eyes. Therefore, literally the only way that I can possibly conceive of this getting so many positive reviews is the positive contrast effect, where something looks better than it should simply because it's being compared to something that is so bad. It's like you're forced to eat a pile of crap or a pile of garbage. They're both awful, but that garbage is looking kind of good right now. But now I really want you to think about this one. Just try to imagine if this wasn't Halo. Imagine if Halo never even existed and this was just some random sci-fi show. Would you still even care about it? Would you watch it? Do you think it's entertaining because it's good writing and good sci-fi? Or do you just like it because it has Halo stuff in it? That's the problem with the show. Well, on that note, I'm glad this is finally done, and I hope that they learn their lesson and they wise the hell up for season 3. Well, I'm sure that'll happen. Till then, guys. Peace out.
Oh dear God, the Halo show is so painfully bad. We got Kwan high and Mickey and it makes me so sad. Remember that time when Chief slept with that chick? Why is this in Halo? It really makes me sick, oh dear God. Why am I doing this again? This show is a monument to all three-quarter sins. Oh, but I'm sure Kwan High won't be in the show.